Good afternoon, everyone. Today, we will be presenting to you a video of the site analysis our group has conducted for Jerejak Island. Pulau Jerejak is actually a small island that is located off the southeastern tip of Penang Island, which is just a short boat ride away from Bayan Lepas. As you can see in the site plan here, the red circle marks out the approximate location that we have chosen to put our personal 100 by 100 meter site at. The personal site boundary is more clearly defined here in this personal site plan drawing. Now, let's talk a bit about the history of Pulau Jerejak. Here, we have a timeline of the most significant historical events that happened on the island. In 1868, a leper asylum was completed on the island, but it only began operations 3 years later in 1871. Then, in 1880, the asylum was expanded to become the collection center of leprosy for the whole of the Strait settlements all the way until the 1930s. Also in the 1930s, the British Empire built a hospital on the island to house tuberculosis patients. The Leprosarium and Tuberculosis Hospital was closed in the 1960s and all remaining patients were transferred out. Then, on 12 June 1969, the Jerejak Rehabilitation Center was set up as a maximum security prison, giving the island the nickname the Alcatraz of Malaysia. It continued to operate until August 1993. Then, in 2000, plans to develop the island were conceived, and in 2004, Jerejak Rainforest Resort opened to the public and operates till the present time. So what we can see from here is that the island has a rich history, but one that is full of stigma, dogma, and negativity. As a suggestion, the proposed VIC can be a response towards highlighting these memories and experiences. Moving on, here is the neighborhood context in Pulau Jerejak. As you can see, we have identified and categorized the context into two categories, that is abandoned or old, and in use or new. This is the jetty, the resort, the fish farms, and the shipyard. Then, here is the context that is abandoned or old, such as the water reservoir, the old prison, the old church, the patient cemetery, the school building, the old British prison, the bunkers, and the Russian cemetery. What we can conclude from this analysis is that there exists many historical structures on site that the users are able to explore. Here, in the site survey that we performed, we have measured and determined the area for the site and the surrounding context as shown in the plan here, the dimensions of height and length for the three existing structures, and we generated a site section with on-site context to scale, as can be seen here. Here is the contour plan for the island of Jerejak. Each contour line is cut at interval heights of 10 meters, and the colors from red to magenta, as seen in the legend, shows increasing heights of the contour lines. The highest point on the island is at a height of 200 meters. Also, at the location of our proposed site, the contour lines show that there are shallow slopes at the site. The next diagram here is about site drainage. The diagram shows the rainwater runoff from the higher area to the lower areas. The slope at our personal site is actually quite shallow, but there are no major depressions that can be found. Therefore, the site has little to no drainage problems. However, please take note that the water collects around the prison due to a depression at that area, maybe due to a lack of drainage facilities. Thus, when designing your building, we suggest incorporating a simple drainage system around the proposed VIC to avoid any flooding issues. Now, let's have a look at the vegetation on site. From experience, images and information from the resort staff, we have identified that there are 6 types of trees that exist on site. There is the Samania or rain tree that goes about 30 meters, Angsana to about 20 meters, Ketapang to about 17.5 meters, Kaya to about 15 meters, Cemerlang to 10 meters, and finally Kelat to only 1.5 meters tall. So as you can see from the plan, the area surrounding the personal site has a rich context of vegetation, but at the personal site itself, the trees are not so numerous, rather their positions are quite sporadic and the tree heights are quite low as compared to the surroundings. Because of this, the site is more exposed to sun and rainfall and there is very little shade. As a suggested solution, the VIC can have more shading devices to compensate for the lack of shade. Now, we shall move on to pedestrian and boat circulation. The boat circulation pathway is shown as the blue line in the diagram, and point 1 and 2 shows views from the boat shown in the pictures. From point 1, the users have visual of the old abandoned reservoir, and from point 2, the users can see the old jetty and abandoned church. Next, the main pedestrian circulation between the resort and site is shown as the red line. At point A, the pathway becomes a mud trail, and at point B and C, the pathway is blocked by fallen trees and branches. At path D, the pathway starts to disappear and becomes less obvious through the heavy vegetation. At point E, the path starts to become more delineated and more clear. Finally, at F, the pathway is clearly defined again by the soil. So, synthesizing this information with neighborhood context, the users have a lot of chance to interact with the historical structures as they walk towards the site. So, we suggest that the potential VIC incorporates those experiences the users have with the existing structures as they move on the pathway. Let's move on to views. For views, we have 3 categories, that is from site, to site, and through site. Let's have a look at from site views first. As you can see, views are separated into 4 types, that is excellent, good, bad, and worst views. The most excellent views are in the northwest and south directions. In the northwest, you can see the old jetty, which frames views of Penang Island across the sea. In the south, you have unobstructed views of a pathway cutting through a stone quarry, framed by the hill forest in the background. Then, for the views to site, the most excellent views are again from the pathway in the south because views are obstructed. However, there are also good views of existing structures from the boat in the west and northwest directions. Through site, there exist 2 views. One view goes from Penang Island through the jetty and into the site, and one more view goes through the pathway in the south, through the center of the site and out towards the bridge. From this analysis, we can conclude that the site has a variety of views to be taken advantage of. Thus, we suggest the openings of the VIC be orientated towards those views that matches your design idea. Now, let's talk about the noise. The diagram above shows the noises that can be heard from site. That is the noise from the jungle, noise from the waves, noise from the boats, and noise from the planes. As you can see, the noise from the jungle and sea is quite prevalent. However, there are bad noises coming from the boat and plane engines. So, we can suggest to build a sound barrier between the VIC and the bad noises while allowing noise from the jungle to come in. Here, we can see the climate diagrams such as the windrows diagram, the number of rain days in a month, the precipitation amount, and the wind speed. So, what we can conclude from here is that the most of the wind comes from the southwest, but actually the strongest prevalent winds come from the north. Also, the site receives a lot of rainfall throughout the year. The 3 different illustrations here show the sun path and the shadow patterns for 3 different times of the day, that is at 8 AM, 1 PM, and at 6 PM. Moving on, here is the program diagram for Pulau Jerejak. From this diagram, we can see that the current largest use of the site is commercial, that is the Jerejak Resort. Thus, it can be said that the main users of the island would be tourists or people looking for recreation. Interestingly, to take a historical perspective, the site that is commercial now, that is the resort, actually used to be the land area for the leprosarium, which was cleared once development of the resort began. So again, it can be suggested that the memories of the past users be dedicated in the VIC. Here are the poetic images of the site. Under color, we can see that the site is full of natural colors and there is a lot of contrast. The colors are vibrant, but there isn't much of a variety. Under light and shadow, we can conclude that the interesting light and shadow play is actually created by the existing structures. Finally, for texture, it can be said that there is a variety of smooth and rough surfaces that contrast one another. Finally, we shall end our site analysis with a SWOT analysis of the site. Strengths of the site include minimal drainage problems, good views, lush vegetation, and rich in historical context. However, the site does have its weaknesses, such as there is not much shade to protect from the weather and the sun. The site is hard to access because it's far from the resort by foot and the pathway is uneven. Also, visitors have no obvious direction to the VIC. So some threats that we can identify on the site include that we can't explore the site during the night time because there is a lack of artificial lighting and it's also easy to get lost in the jungle during the night. It's also because of the jungle, it's also possible to get bitten by snakes, and because of the lack of shading, it's easy to get sunburn and you can easily get drenched from the rain. So some opportunities that we can see at the site include providing sound buffer to provide a better sound comfort, set up more artificial lighting so that the visitors can visit the site at night, set up signboards to direct the users more easily to the VIC, and also utilize the sounds from the forest and from the sea to provide a serene environment.